All right. The goal for today's video is going to be to build a Twitch bot. Sorry, we already built a Twitch bot. To build a set of commands for our Twitch bot that is going to allow us to set and display and track specific goals that we've set for not only the stream as a whole. So, like, of course, we can do things like follower goals, sub goals, stuff like that, the traditional stuff. But what I mean is setting goals that's more specific to the game or the category that we are currently streaming in. So, what it's going to start with is just a text based version of this that's going to be spit out to chat, very similar to how we're doing the temperature conversion and the define command in the bot. But then what that's going to lead into is moving the functionality of this bot into a overlay that the bot will then talk to, that will display information on the screen for both the stream and just whatever else we decide to put it on. So it's going to be, for all intents and purposes, a mini version of Stream Elements that will have quite a bit more control over, even though we're going to have to do a lot more manual work to get that control. We will have, when it's all said and done, significantly more control over the things that we will do with the overlay, the data that gets displayed, the interaction that chat can have with the overlay, so on and so forth. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is actually register the program that we're trying to build with the Twitch API itself. So we have to get a API key, a client key, and various other things that will allow us to actually interact with the Twitch API. So first thing you're going to need to do is to go to the address that you see on the screen up here, which I will put it in the chat again. I went through the registration process off stream a while back, and the instructions here are actually pretty clear and self-explanatory. So even though it might seem rather daunting at first, just make sure that you're following the instructions that you see on this page as carefully as you can. And you should be fairly set up to be able to do connections with the Twitch API. But just to give a quick run through of how this works, I'll just briefly go through the instructions myself. So first thing you need to do is just, like it says, go to this link in order to get to the development console. You'll notice that I've already set up my own application. So you'll need to do the same thing right there. I don't want to click that because I don't know if it's going to show any, information that is specific to my stream key, etc., etc. So I don't want to click it just in case. But once you create your application, then you're going to get a few pieces of information. So the first thing that it's going to give you is a client ID, which you're going to need the client ID in order to make API calls whenever you start to do things. Whenever you're trying to get the access token, you're going to need your client secret. So make sure that you take note of your client ID and your secret as well. I would recommend copying and pasting both of them somewhere that you know where they are, and just don't show them on your screen at any point, especially if you're streaming everything like what I'm doing. So just copy them down and just make sure you don't show them to anyone. Otherwise, they can wreak havoc on your system. Well, not your system, just your bot. So once you have your client ID and your client secret, move on down to step 2, where you need to install the Twitch client command line interface, so CLI. So what this is going to allow you to do is to get your access token, which you're going to need in order to make calls to the API itself. So what you're actually going to need in order to do calls to the API specifically is the client ID and the access token. And you need the client secret in order to get access to the access token. And just so all of you know, your access token is only valid for 60 days. So after it expires, you'll need to go through this step again in order to get a new access token and continue to use the API, which we're gonna at some point figure out a way to do this within our bot. So in order to check if the current token that we have is valid, and if it's not, just get a new one. But for now, we'll just get our tokens manually. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to get the Twitch command line interface, which is on this link right here. So just click this right here, and it'll bring you here. It'll bring you to this page, and depending on if you're on Mac or Windows, will determine how you go about doing this. So I'm on Windows, and so if you're on Windows, they're saying that the easiest way to do this will be to use Scoop. And Scoop is basically just a package manager or command line installer for Windows. And so just follow the instructions on this page. It's on scoop.sh, and just follow the instructions here to install Scoop. And then once you have Scoop, you'll need to follow the instructions on the GitHub page for the Twitch CLI to install it. So once you do these two commands, you'll need to do them individually using Scoop. Once you do that, then you can come back to this page and it'll show you how to use the command line interface for Twitch to make calls to the API and get your access token. So if you just type in Twitch whenever you have PowerShell open, it'll give you this batch of information right here. But the thing that we care about right now is getting our access token. So what we do is we type in on PowerShell is Twitch token, and then it's going to ask you for your client ID and the client secret that you got whenever you registered for your application up here. So unfortunately, you cannot copy and paste your client ID or secret into PowerShell. So you'll have to type them in manually. I actually did this like 10 minutes before the stream. So that's how I figured that out pretty quick. And once you put in your client ID and your secret, you will get a access token. Make sure that you copy and paste the access token. This is just an example shown on the documentation page. Don't try and use this. Just copy and paste what they give you whenever you put in that information. As far as step 3 goes, we really don't need to worry about this. This is just like, making sure that you can make a request to the API. So, which we are going to do ourselves once we get the client ID and the access token into our Twitch bots config file. So, with that in mind, let's go back to our code base. And unfortunately, I have to hide the screen for a second because I need to set up some stuff in our config file that, if you see, will not be really good for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my password for the bot for a moment, and then I'm going to hide the screen. And so your password would actually be right here for the bot itself, but I'm hiding that for a moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a few extra, attributes to our config file. What we're going to do is we're going to add in 2 specific attributes. We're going to add in an API key. So I'm doing this as API key like this. Typically, whenever you have something in all caps, it means it's a constant, something that really should never change. But which in this case, the API key will never change, but the access token will. So instead of calling that in all caps, I will just do it like this. So access token, and then going to be a string. So now that we have these keys right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the screen again, and I'm going to put in this information, and then we will worry about, how we're going to actually use it. So let me do that really quick. All right, now that I have put in that information into the config file, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new set of commands that's going to allow us to create goals for the stream based on the game that we're playing or the category that we're in. So to do that, we are going to be using a few different API calls. And so the first one that we're going to do is we're actually going to use from the Twitch API, we're going to use a call that you can see right here. We're going to do a GET request to this address, and we're going to put in my stream's information to get the current game or category that we're playing, and then use the information from this to obtain the game that we're playing, make another call to a different API that will allow us to get specific information on that game, such as the game name and just different information, that's relevant to what we're trying to do. So we'll be making one call that leads into the next call, which it looks like there's actually stuff right here already. Let's just get the game name. Hold on. Maybe the code that I've done before is out of date because I've been using a old code base to get the game information. So now that I'm looking at what the Twitch API returns from the streams route, it looks like we may not need to grab information on the game itself anymore because part of what I was using the second API call for was to get the game's name. Because before, what I had to do, because I tried this a few years back, was once you make the call to get your stream's current information, you would only get the game's ID, which is what you see highlighted here. And then you would need to make a separate call to the game's route, and that would give you the game name. And now it looks like I can just get the game name directly from the stream's route. So we may need to only do a single call, which will make our process significantly more efficient. Let's try it. So as you can see from the example request up here, what we need to do is we need to have two pieces of information that is going to allow us to make the request to the Twitch API. First thing we need is the client ID, which you got from step one of setting up the Twitch application. And then you need the authorization, which is the access token, which you got in step two. So we'll put in these two things as request headers whenever we make the request to the Twitch API. And that will show the Twitch API that we actually have authorization to access the thing, and we're not just some random person trying to do just, malicious things with the code base. So something else that's worth taking note is that whenever we call the Twitch API for this particular route right here, we're going to need to also add in some query parameters that's going to allow us to search for our channel specifically. So in my case, we're specifically looking for the channel Sir Silverstar. And the way that we do that is we need to add in some extra information to this route right here. And the way that you do that, I don't know if you've ever noticed whenever you're looking at a URL, sometimes you'll see an address and then a question mark and then something else, and then an and sign and then something else, so on and so forth. You can sort of see it right here. So what you're getting is you're getting the route to the thing that you're trying to request, and then a question mark right here. And then you're getting right here, it says first equals 20. And so you can see right here, that's the parameter that it's calling. So it's asking for 20 objects to be returned, and so on and so forth. So these are the different things that you can add in behind the, the route right here in order to specify the information that you're looking for. So if you need more than one bit of information, what you would do is you would say this address and then a question mark, and then say you want first equals 50. So you want the first 50 objects that it wants to return. And then you can look up a specific ID. So you would say the and sign and then game ID, and then put in the game ID with equals, then the game ID. Or if you're looking for a specific user, in this case, that's what we're doing. We're looking for a specific user, which is going to be our channel. So in my case, your Silver Star. So what you would do is you would say this address question mark user login equals your Silver Star, and that's what tells the Twitch API exactly what you're looking for, instead of just giving you all kinds of information that you can't use. That's how you specify the information that you're looking for directly within a link. So let's just do that, shall we? So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to set up some preliminary stuff that we're going to do within the goals system that we're setting up. Wolf the Adventure is asking, and we would want the username for the channel, not the bot. Yes. So if you're trying to set up something that is specific to your stream, like say you're streaming, you would want to get information on your channel. So you would put in Wolf the Adventurer. If you're trying to get information specific to your bot, you would put in the information for the bot. But that's not what we're going for in this case. We need to know exactly what my stream is doing, not what the bot is doing. Because the part of what's going on here is we need to know the information that is currently valid for my stream while it's live, which I'll show momentarily. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up some preliminary information. So one of the things, we're going to need to track two things specifically. We need to track the current game that we're playing, and we need to track the current goals for that game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the current game to a string that just says no selection in all caps. And and so this is going to tell us, okay, we need to reach out to the API and we need to get the current game that we're working with. And then we're going to set the current goals to just a null value, because we can't use the current goals because there is no game to, set them to right now. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to check to see if the current game is something other than no selection. And if it is, then we're going to reach out to a file that we're going to save that will be specific to that game, and then pull in the goals information for that. And if there is no game selected, we will reach out to the Twitch API and we'll say, okay, we need to figure out what game it is that we are currently streaming so we can pull in the goals information. So let's start off by making a new command in the bot that is going to allow us to get the goals information, or specifically the information about the game that we're playing from the Twitch API. So let's start off with that. So let's start off with a new command, and we're going to say if the word array at index 0, so this is typically what is considered the command equals, and let's call this one exclamation point get goals, get goals. So this is what's going to allow us to refresh the API. And this is probably something that I will restrict the usage of to either myself and the myself and the mods, or just myself, so that people can't abuse the API. Since this is making a direct API request, we don't want to overload the API. We want to use it as few times as possible. So what we're going to do is we are going to make a request to the Twitch API. And we're going to do that by essentially the same method that we used to reach out to the dictionary API. We're just going to need a little bit more information than what we had before. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a request. And within this request, we are going to first get the URL that we are working with. So we're going to have a JSON object. And within that JSON object, we have a URL. This is what we're going to be reaching out to specifically for the API. So I already have this copied and pasted. So I'll just copy and paste it to make things easier for us. And I will explain what I've done. So as I explained before, the way that this works is we are specifically reaching out to the streams route of the Twitch API. And then we have a query parameter indicated by the question mark. So question mark means that we're dealing with query parameters within a link. And then the next thing you put is the name of the parameter that you're looking for. In this case, the user login, and then the equal sign, and then in our case, the name of the channel. So in this case, Sir Silverstar. And if we were just working with something like the dictionary API, this would be all that we need. However, because we need to actually have some form of authentication and authorization for the Twitch API, we need to have a bit of extra, validation going on. In this case, we need a headers value. So the headers is going to be another JSON object. And if we look back at the Twitch API, we can see that the headers right here, we need two of them. So we need the client ID and we need the authorization. So first thing we'll do is we will come back here and we'll put in the client ID, and it needs to be case sensitive. So this is client and ID. Make sure that I'm spelling this right. So yes, like this. So it looks like it would probably be better if we put this as a string, just to be safe. And then we will grab our configuration and then our API key. This is our client ID. So, and then the authorization, we will call the configuration file and the access token. But before I forget, we specifically need to put in on the authorization, we need to put in the word bearer and then the access token. So this is what's called a bearer token. So that's why you need the specifically bearer. So if you wanted to, to make your life a little easier, you could put in, whenever you have the access token in your config file, you could put in the word bearer and then space, and then the access token itself, just to save yourself a little bit of typing if you need to do a lot of this. So once we put in all of this information, we need to put in a function as a callback. So we're going to get the information back from this API call. And so in this case, we're just going to do something, fairly simple. So we're just going to create a function. So we function and sorry, I can put this in the wrong place. So this is why you need to pay attention to where your curly brackets are. So right here. So the next argument to the request parameter is a function. We're going to create a function and we need to check if there is an error in this function. We need to grab the response to the request and we need to get the body of the request. So, and then we make a function out of it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to check in the same way that we did in the define command whenever we called the API there. What we're going to do is we are going to check if we have a successful request, if we've successfully retrieved the information that we're looking for. So we're going to say if, and let me drag this down a bit so you can see it. So if we do not have an error, so exclamation point means not. So if we do not have an error, and if the response's status code equals 200. So if you'll recall, the status code of 200 means that you have successfully retrieved something from either a API or a database or what have you. And sorry, this should be a number, not a string. So if nothing went wrong and we successfully got our information, what we're going to do is we are going to create a constant and let's call it just stream info. And we're going to parse the JSON information from the body. And then just to see what it actually gave us, we'll just do a console.log of the stream information, just so we can see what we're working with. And if the API call failed, what we're going to do is we are just going to do a console.log of the error and the response. So console.log, we're going to print out the error and we're going to print out the response so that we can see the information that, what went wrong. So assuming that I did everything correctly, let's run the bot and then see if it works. So let me pull up the terminal. This is probably going to take a second. So I will move into the source directory and we're going to run the node bot command, okay, which the bot should be running now. Login authentication failed. Unhandled promise rejection. This error originated either by throwing inside of a asynchronous function without a catch block or by rejecting a promise. It was not handled. Terminate the node process unhandled. Okay, so what happened? Why did this break on us? Okay, why did this break? So this is just part of the development process. So let me make sure that my keys are all input correctly. Let's try it again. Okay, so now the bot is actually running. So what we'll do is we will attempt to call the get goals command. So, and I put it as get goals. Okay, so good. This is the response by which we are getting the information from the Twitch API. We have successfully called the Twitch API. And what this has done for us is we now have a bit of extra information. So what it's given us is the name of the stream, which is our name. It's given us the game ID, which in this case, it's not actually a game. And this is what we used to have to use in order to get the game name, which it looks like we don't even have to do anymore. So we just have the game name. In this case, we are in the software and game development category. It tells us we are currently live with the title and 11 viewers. Nice. We started at this time, and the gives us the tags that we're currently working with, and it shows that the stream is not flagged as mature. So this information is all correct, and the specific information that we need from this is actually just the game name. So before, whenever I did this a few years ago, what I would have to do is I would only get the game ID. And what I would then have to do is use the game ID in order to make another call to the Twitch API to get the game ID's game name, which we would then use to work with the API, work with the goals system that we're trying to set up. So it's nice that we don't have to do that anymore. So just for the lulz, let's put in a define command for victory, since victory is ours. So, okay, we'll stop the bot for now because we need to do some stuff with it. So what we're going to do is, now that we have successfully grabbed information, we are going to grab the game name. So what we're going to do is we are going to specifically grab the game name from this. And it also looks like it pushed it to us in a array. Make sure that, yes, so it pushed it to us in an array. So we need to be aware of that. So we have an array of, exactly one element. So what we're going to do is we are first going to define the current game as the game name. And that should be simple enough to do. What we'll do is we're going to say that we're going to come over here. And once we have the information, so we can just comment this out since we're not going to need it for a minute. What we're going to do is we are going to say the current game now equals the stream info at element 0. So sorry, it's the the stream info's data, because this is pushing in from the data attribute of this JSON object. So let me just do it like this. So data, and then at element 0, because there's only one element going on here. And then we are going to grab the game name. So game name. And just to make sure that this works, we are going to console.log game name in the current game. Because just to make sure that we're grabbing the right things. So we'll run the bot again, because I feel like I may have messed something up. We'll get the get goals. Not again, I did it right. That's fine. I shouldn't doubt myself. So now that we have the current game, we can get rid of this. What we're going to do is we are going to now define the current goals for the game. What we're going to do is we are going to say that the current goals equals a new JSON object that is going to contain two elements, or two attributes, sorry. It's going to contain a game attribute. Actually, let's call this category, because we may not actually be doing a game for this all the time. Let's call it category. And this is going to be the current game, which I really should call this current category. But let's do that. Let's do that. So let's do a quick replace all of current game with current category. And thank you for that follow, stopping cam. Let me make sure I said that right. Glad you're enjoying the stream. Stop sign cam. Sorry. Glad you're enjoying the stream. Feel free to join us in chat. How are you? So let's replace the variable name of current game with current category to keep things consistent, and we will replace all. So, all right, we'll go down here, current category. So we have the current category, and then we will make a goals attribute that is just going to be an array. And this is what we're going use in order to track our goals. So once we have this, we can create a new command that is going to allow us to add goals to the list. So actually, we're going to create a few new commands. We just minimize these. We don't clutter ourselves. So we're going to create a few more commands. And actually, you know what? Let's also do a once we pull in all this information. If we've done it successfully, we will do a chatbot say chatbot dot say. We will send it to the channel, and we will say that the goals for goals for and then the current category has been loaded, and we'll also do a console.log to show the same thing, since we need to show that for the YouTube video. So let's do copy this, and then we will paste this. Now let us add in a new command, actually a few new commands. What we're going to do is we're going to add in a new command called, let's see, actually let me do a little bit of editing. I want this to be a little g, and I want this to be ensured that it's always lowercase. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in an extra command right here. So we're going to force the command to be all in lowercase to make sure that this matches at any given time. And actually, we'll just do that with everything to make sure that the things that we're doing remain consistent. We're just going to do a quick little addition to all of our stuff. So the lowercase and the lowercase. This just ensures that if someone puts in uppercase or lowercase at any point, it's going to match the command format, to any degree. So it makes it case insensitive, what this does. So makes things a little easier for chat to use depending on how they decide to do things. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new command. We're going to say else if the word array at 0, the lowercase, equals, let's just call this one goals. And we're going to worry about this one in a little bit. So we need to be able to add goals first, but we need this to still be here because this is what's going to display the goals in chat, but we need to be able to add goals first. So we're going to do, so we're going to add in another command, and we're going to say else if word array at index 0 to the lowercase equals, we're going to say this one is going to be called add goal, right? This one's going to be a little trickier than what we were doing before. So what we're going to do is we need to take the word array and then make it into a singular string again. However, we do not want the add goal word or command to be in the goal itself. So we're going to define a goal, and then we're going to say, we want everything after this to be pushed to the goals array as a string, but we don't want this. The first thing that we'll need to do is we will need to take out this word. And the way that you remove an element from an array is you call the array and you say splice. And the splice command takes two arguments. The first argument it takes is the index of the index of the array that you want to remove. So the starting point. And then the second argument is the number of elements after that you want to delete. So in this case, we only want to delete one element, in this case, element 0. So we just want to get rid of this, which is going to get rid of the exclamation point add goal part of this. So we just got rid of the command part of the message. And then in order to make it a string again, what we're going to do is we're going to say const new goal equals the word array join, and this takes a single argument. So if you'll notice before, whenever we split the message that comes into chat into a word array, we split it based on the space. So every word is split into its own element of an array. And so if we want to create a singular string again, specified by spaces, we put a space back in here. So what this does is it takes the array and it just smashes it all together into a singular string. And then after every element of an array, it will add in this. It will just put in a space. So like if we wanted to make a comma separated list of every word, we would put in a comma and a space. You could put in this and then dash dash. You could literally put in whatever you want right here to separate the different parts of your string. But because we want this to be a sentence, essentially, we want this to be separated with spaces because we're essentially just creating a sentence with words. So now that we have the string put together again, minus the add goal part of it, what we can do is we can say the current goals dot goals, and we want to push onto this array. We want to add something to this array. And the way that you do that is you push something off of it. Sorry, you push something onto it. So you just it just works the same way that it sounds. You're taking something and you're just shoving it in. So you're shoving it into the end of the array. So the more times you do this, the bigger the array gets. So because our goals array is empty, it's going to shove this in. It's going to shove our new goal into element 0. So if we were to do this again, it would do it as a new goal and it would shove it in to the element 1 of the goals array. And so once we've done this, what we can do is we can say that a new goal has successfully been added. So let's have the chatbot dot say we're going to send this to the channel, and then we're going to say new goal added, new goal added, and we'll do a console.log to say the same thing. Oops. New goal added. All right, now that we have the ability to add in goals, the next thing that we want to do is to be able to display the goals that have been added. So at this point, whenever we add goals, they're only going to stay for as long as the bot is turned on. But we can fix that. We're going to do that not long after we're done with just displaying things. So we're going to do if the current command is just exclamation point goals, what we're going to do is we are going to create a new string. We're going to call it goals list. Well, let's just call it goals string. Okay? And we're going to start it off as an empty string. Then what we want to do is we want to create a for loop that's going to go through all of the goals that we have. And then we're going to, we're going to go through all of the goals that we have. And we're just going to print them out one at a time and create a singular string out of this. And then spit that out to the chat goals, that length. And then we're going to iterate over every element in the array. What we're going to do is to create this string, this goal string. What we're going to do is we're going to say we want the goal string to, we want the new value of the goal string to be the current value of the goal string plus, and then we want to say I plus 1. The reason that I'm doing this is because if we just say I, we're going to get 0 first, and then it's going to say goal 0, and then so on and so forth. And we kind of want it to look like a normal readable thing. So we're going to say I plus 1, and then we're going to say, we're going to add in a period and a space. It's going to say goal 1, or just 1 period space, 2 period space, and then the goal. So then we say add in the, the current goals at element I. So then what we can say is if Thank you for the follow, Manchu. Glad you're enjoying the stream. Feel free to join us in chat. How are you? And then what we're going to do is we're going to check if I does not equal the current roll's length minus 1, meaning that if we are not on the last element of the array, what we're going to do is we're going to add in just a space to the goal string, because what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to more easily separate the goals themselves. Otherwise, once we do this string right here, it's going to say 2 and then just smashed right together. It's not going to look right. We're just going to add in a simple space. That's it. And then once we're done with all this, we're going to spit out the message to chat. So we're going to do a chatbot say. We're going to send this to the channel, and then we're going to throw out the goals string. Easy. And then we are going to do a console.log of the same thing. We're just going to spit out goal string. So that should be everything. Should be. So we're going to do, we're going to stop the bot. We are going to reset it. And we're going to first do the get goals command. So start the bot back up, and I will run the get goals command. All right. So there you go. So the goals for software and game development have been loaded. All right, chat. I require your assistance. I need you to type in exclamation point add goal as a single word, and then space, and then just type in anything you want. I don't care what it is, as long as it's not, lewd or, breaks any of the stream rules. Just give a random goal. It doesn't have to be for software and game development. Just type in something. So, add a goal, eat a taco. All right? Catherine obviously knows me. Anybody else? Exclamation point, add a goal, and then space, and then slap anything in the chat. Developers, TwitchBot AI. Okay? New goal added, sweet. And then let's do, if you want to do one more, let's do one more. Anybody can do it. It doesn't matter if you've already done one. Hydrate or dihydrate. Okay, so now that we have 3 goals in there, someone please in the chat just put in exclamation point goals, the plural goal. There you go. It spits out the 3 goals that were put into the chat. So we now have a working goals system. At least we can add goals anyway. So we're going to need to add in a thing where we can delete goals as well. So let's actually do that. What we can do is we can, yes, it should be good. So what we'll do is we'll stop the bot, and we will add in a way to delete goals. And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to, you can see in the chat and in the terminal how it breaks up the goals by numbers. So 1, 2, 3. So what this is going to do is we're going to take the goal number as the one that we're going to delete, and then just go from there. So how this is going to work is probably going to be easier than the way that I did this the first time around, some years ago. So what we're going to do, we're going to say if the word array at index 0, so lowercase, is equal to delete goal, delete goal. What we're going to do is we are first going to check if the number, so what we're going to do is we're going to delete goal and then space a number. So the first thing we need to do is we need to check and make sure that the thing that we're deleting is a number. So remember before we checked to see if something was not a number or not. So what we can do is we can actually take this right here and use this again. So what we're doing is we're going to check if the number that's after this, if it's not a number. So if, I'm going to say if it's not a number, we're going to say, turn on the bot, say, cannot delete, chatbot, say, send this to the channel, and we're going to say, unable to delete non-existent existent ent. You kind of lose the ability to spell whenever you whenever you start coding. Okay, and then we'll console.log that. Now, if the number that is after delete goal is actually a number, what we'll do is we will do the same thing that we did earlier whenever we were removing the goal command from the add goal thing right here. So whenever we spliced, we'll do the same thing here with a little bit of a twist. What we'll do is we will say that we are splicing from the goals array. So we're saying the current goals, and then we are splicing, splice, and the the element index that we are splicing is going to parse the integer from the word array at index 1, which is the thing after the space of delete goal. Then we're going to say -1. So if you put in delete goal 1, it's going to say delete, it's going to splice element 0. So, and then we want to remove one element. So, and then that, the bots say to the channel, we want to say goal, and then word array at index 1 has been deleted. All right, now that we have that, this is what we're going to do. We are going to restart the bot, and then we are going to add in some goals. Let me set the thing. There we go. And what I need you to do, chat, is type in exclamation point add goal and then space and then just some goals. Now try exclamation point goals just to display all the goals. Okay, so now it's displaying all the goals. Now what we need to try is to do delete goal and then a number. So in this case, delete goal either 1, 2, or 3. And then we need to see if it works. I think I forgot to add in a console log. I did. For delete goal, I forgot to add in a console log. Delete goal is, okay, goal 1 has been deleted. Okay, sweet. Now let's see if it's actually been removed. So do exclamation point goals again, and we should get just 2 and 3. Sweet! We can successfully remove goals. Now the trick is, what if we wanted to edit the goal? That is a little bit trickier. Is that something that we want to tackle right now? Or do we want to go and work on saving these things to the file system? Which would y'all prefer, Chet? All right, then. So let's do editing now, then. All right, Chet. Now that we have added in goal addition, deletion, and display, we're going to try something that I have not tried my previous integration of this bot, or at least this system of goal tracking. What we're going to do is we are going to try and edit the goal. And I have an idea, just off the top of my head, of how to go about doing this. And if I've learned anything in doing software, professionally for the past, nearly 3 years, figured out that typically the first time you come up with something, or the first idea that you have of how to solve something, is usually one of the better and simpler ways of doing it. It is very unnecessary to make things harder than they have to be. So let's just go with my first mind. I'll also add in a console log for the deletion stuff. So let's go with my first mind. I have an idea. And if it works, this is going to be super easy. What we're going to do is we're going to add in another command. I'm going to say if the word array at index 0 to lowercase equals edit goal. Edit goal. What we're going to do is we're going to do something very similar to what we just did with the deletion of the goal. First thing we need to check is if the first part of the command is a number. So I need to put an exclamation point. So we need to see if this is a number. So we'll just change this to unable to edit non-existent goal. I'll change this to edit. Okay. Now, what we're gonna do is whenever we're editing the goal, we're gonna do something very similar to what we did with the add goal command when we spliced out the word array and then pushed everything to the, actually no, it's not going to be like the add goal. It's going to be like displaying goals. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a goal string. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same thing here, except with some small additions. And I'll show that here shortly. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new string. We're going to call it edited goal string. I might be able to see where I'm going already. I'm going to set it to an empty string. What we're going to do is we are going to first create a for loop. We're going to say for, and we're going to say let the starting point of the iterator be at 2. We're not going to be doing this at 0 because we don't want to have the word edit goal and we don't want to have the number. So we're just skipping over those. We are starting at index 2. And then we're going to say I is less than the current, let's see, no, we're going to do less than the word array dot length. And then we're going to go over everything in the message. And then we are just going, then we're going to just reconstruct the message after this. So what we're going to do is we're going to say edited goal string equals edited goal string plus the word array at index I. That's it. And then we're going to say if I does not equal the word array length -1. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this already, hopefully. And then we're just going to add in a space. That's all we're doing. Edited goal string equals the edited goal string plus a space. Now, mind you, chat, I know some of you, who are developers in here are probably like, Silver, you could easily just go edited goal string plus equals and then space. I could do that, yes. But the reason that I'm not is I'm going for readability here. And reason for that is a lot of the people that will be watching these videos and streams, at least in my mind, or at least my target audience, is people that are not as familiar with software concepts. So I'm trying to make things more readable as we go along. So that's why I'm doing it like this. So now that we have reconstructed the goals, the goal for that particular element, what we're going to do is we are going to say the current goals at the index, the goals at the index of, we want to parse the integer of the word array at index 1. So the way this is going to work is we're going to say exclamation point edit goal, and then the goal number, and then the goal, like the edited goal itself. We're going to say edited goal -1, same as we did for the delete goal. And so we're going to make that the edited goal string. Easy peasy. So that's that. And then we're just going to have the bot say that we'll just copy this and just change the wording to edited. And I just realized that my music has been playing the whole time. Hopefully that doesn't mess things up in post. And then we're going to say has been edited, edited. All right. And that's it. We should have a working edited goals command now. So what I need to do is I need to stop the bot and restart it. All right, Chet, I require your assistance. What I need you to do is I need you to add in a few goals. So exclamation point, add goal, and then some wordage, and then just add in a few goals. And then we will try and edit one of those goals. So we have 4 goals added. So, which are all of those, which I'd say those are pretty good goals. So what I would like someone to do is, now that we have all of these, try this. Exclamation point, edit goal, space, and then a number, 1 through 4, just, any number 1 through 4, space, and then just put in a new goal. Just change whatever the goal is, and we will see if it edits. Okay, so then we changed goal 3 from drink tea, drink water. Let's see if it worked. And it did. So we can now add, edit, and remove goals from our list. And when it's all said and done, it really wasn't that hard. So I like it. GG. So the next thing that we need to do to make this thing more fully featured and robust is to be able to save the goals that we've created to a file that is specific to a game or a category. So let's work on that. All right, now that we have everything that we need in order to create a goal tracking system, meaning we can add goals, we can delete goals, we can edit existing goals, we can do whatever we need to do. The only thing that's left to do is to make this persistent. So currently, every time that we turn off the bot, we lose all of our goals that we put in, everything that we're trying to track. And so it would be ideal if we could save our goals to a file. And ideally, it would be nice to be able to save them to an individual file that is relevant to the category that we are currently working with. So to do that, we are going to need to create a few folders and a few helper functions. So in our source folder, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it category files. So create a new directory and we're going to call it just all lowercase category files. Okay. So that's going to show up right here on the left. And one of the first things we need to do is we need to, in our bot project, we need to import the file system package that comes default in Node. So we need to add in a new constant up here. We're just going to call it fs. This is the traditional way of doing this. So we're going to say we're going to require a new package and call it fs. And this is built in to Node, or at least it should be. The coding assistance for, okay, so I'm just going to enable code assistance in my IDE. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to create a new helper function for something that we're going to use a number of times, and that is going to be the saving of a file to the file system. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a function. And just for poops and giggles, let's create it as an arrow function just to show how we can do arrow functions. So the chat message handler is just like a regular vanilla function. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create an arrow function. And if you're not familiar with the differences between regular functions and arrow functions, that is something that I cover in my JavaScript fundamentals playlist on this channel. So just look in the playlists and you'll find it. So what we'll do is we'll call this function save category file, save category, save category file. This is going to be equal to an arrow function. So how you declare an arrow function. So very similar to how you would do a normal function. It's just your parameters would be right here. Instead of saying function to message handler and then your parameters right here, you're declaring your parameters right here. Except in this case, we don't really need any parameters. So you just have an empty set of parentheses. So what we're going to do is we are going to call the file system and down here. So what we're going to do is we are going to put this in a so we're good. So we're going to say we're going to call the file system. We're going to say write file, right? So the write file command takes 3 arguments. What it does is it takes first the path of the file and the file name that we're saving. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this to the public folder. Not public folder. We're going to save it to the category files folder. And then we're going to, within the category files folder, we're going to grab the current category name right here. And then we're going to save this as a JSON file, right? So that is the file path and the file name that we are working with. Now you'll notice that this is a relative path. So what this is doing is it is saving a file from, it's looking at the current position of the bot, in the file structure. And it's saying, based on where I am, go to this folder and then save it as this file name. So this is what's called a relative path. It looks at just where the program is currently running and then goes from there. If this was an absolute path, what it would be is you would see something long like C:/ program file / so on and so forth until you got to this part right here. So that's an absolute path. But that's something that you'll learn if you go into software classes or software engineering at all. So just a little info bit for you. So then the second argument to the write file command is the data that is being saved to this file. What we're going to do is we're going to take the current goals and we're going to make it into a string. So if you'll recall, whenever we pull from the API, we have to take that string and make it back into an object. And in this case, we're taking a JSON object and putting it into a string. And so the stringify command takes 3 arguments. It takes the data that you're wanting to put in to a string. Then it takes in, actually, I'm not even sure what this does. I just know that it puts in a null for what I'm doing right here. I'm not sure exactly what this does. I'll put in the description for this YouTube video, the stringify command, and then you put in a 2 right here. And what this does is it properly formats the file so it's not just one big jumble. Okay, so this right here, the second argument replaces certain parts of the data. So we don't want to do any of that. And this puts in spacing data so that it formats the file in a more readable way. And then the third argument of the write file command is a callback function that simply tells us if we have an error or not. So error. Okay. So, and then this is a function, and all we want it to do is to tell us if there is an error. If there's an error, we want to be informed of the error. In this case, let's just put it out to the console log so that we're not being bombarded in the chat with what the error could possibly be. So do that. And then otherwise, what we want to do is we want to put out to the log. And we're not going to put this in chat again. So we're just going to put this to the console log that the file has been saved successfully. So let's say current category space dot JSON has been saved successfully. That's all we need for that. So we're going to be using this quite a bit. Let's see. Wolf the Adventurer is asking, will this create a folder if it doesn't exist? I do not think that it will, but I will check that for you and get back to you on that. So we need to make sure that we have the folders that we need in existence already, which is why I created this category files folder. And in order to make this write files command more readable, what we'll do is we'll separate the arguments to each line so we can see what we're doing a little better. So, and that should be that for the category file. Or saving to the category file. Now, there is something here that we need to take into consideration, and that is the fact that certain like certain characters are not allowed in file names. And so, in order to make this more error proof whenever we're saving files, we need to consider what characters are currently in existence within a category name and then remove them. So what we're going to do is we are going to create another helper function that will allow us to create a valid file name. It will just ensure that we have a valid file name. So let's create another arrow function, and we'll call it generate valid file name. Valid file name. And this is going to, we'll just leave it as another, no parameter arrow function, because we already know the data that we're grabbing. And first thing we need to do is we need to determine the file characters that cannot be in a file name. So I have that saved as a tab here somewhere. Here we go. So here we go. So on the Microsoft documentation for character names, so this is on docs.microsoft.com. About a quarter of the way down the page, you'll notice that there is a list of reserved characters that cannot be in file names. Now, we could probably do this with regular expressions, but doing regular expressions is, yeesh, it's a task in and of itself. What we're going to do is we're going to go a little bit of a long way around of doing this, okay? And what we'll do is we will do a long string of splits and joins to ensure that we are getting only valid file names, right? So here's how this is going to work. What we're going to do is we are going to take the current category name, all right? And we are going to just return the same name with all of the unwanted characters removed and replaced with a single dash. The way we're going to do that is, since this is really only going to be one command, we can just return something. So, and this is just going to spit out something. This is the return result of the function. What we're going to do is we're going to take the current category. We're going to say split, which is going to split the current category into an array, which is the exact same thing that we did with the message right here. So we split chat messages into an array and we separate it by a space. So in this case, instead of using a space, we're going to use the various characters that are not allowed in the file names. So we're just going to split and then join, split, join, split, join. And so this is going to get a little bit hairy. So the first character that we need to remove is a less than sign. Right? So splits it into an array, and then we want to join it back into a string. So instead of having a less than sign, we just want a dash. And then we are just going to do a dot and then split. And we just keep doing this over and over. So, and then there's a greater than sign and then join and do a dash. Everything that is not allowed within a file name is going to get replaced with a dash. And so just give me a few minutes to get this done because there's a number of them. And then we will just get started, get back to what we were doing. All right. So, fun fact for you, chat. If you need to actually have a quote within a string, because you notice that this is a string. So, if you just try putting in another string, it's not going to do it. Or if you just try putting in 3 strings, it's not going to do it. For the simple fact of this is considering itself to be a string object. So, if you actually want a pair of quotes within a string, what you do is you do a backslash and then the quotation sign. The backslash is what indicates that this is what's called an escape character. So you can do this with quotation marks. You can do this with slashes, I think. So like backslashes, you can do this with single quotes. So this is just something that you pick up over time. So what we're going to do here, now that we've created a function that will get a valid file name for us, what we're going to do is we're going to replace the current category whenever we're saving a file. We're going to call it, we're going to create a constant. We're going to call it valid file name, since we're going to need to use this multiple times within the function. I'm going to say generate valid file name. That's it. So then we're going to replace everywhere where it says current category with valid file name, at least within this function. Yep, valid file name. And then what we're going to do is we are going to, in every place that we are adding, removing, or editing a goal, we are going to save the goal information to the file name for the specific category. So in order to do that, all we have to do is then, once we're done here, so like let's say after the console log and add goal, we are going to say save category file. That's it. And then at the end of the edit goal thing, after the console log, we will do this and we'll just save the category file. And then the same thing with delete. So if we want this to, there we go. So then just save category file. That's it. Now, whenever we add, edit, or delete a goal, it will be automatically saved to a category file, for that particular category. Now, the last thing that we want to do is we want to be able to retrieve a file. So what we want to do is we want to, after we set the current category, after we pull something from the Twitch API, the first thing we want to do is we want to grab the game name or the category name from the information that we get back from the API. Then we want to see if we can pull a file for that category and then load in the goal data that already exists. And if there is no file for that particular category, it will catch the error that we're trying to do. And then it will create just a regular set of goals for us that then once we add a goal, it will save a file. And then if we never add a goal, it just won't save a file. So what we're going to do is we are going to, right here, we're going to do a little bit of editing. And what it's going to say, we're going to do this because there are various errors that can happen here. We're going to do this in a try catch block. So what we're going to do is we're going to try, and if you are not familiar with try catch blocks, I cover this in the error handling video in my JavaScript fundamentals playlist. I'm going to call the error object in the catch block file error, since we already have an error up here. If we get an error, we're just going to console.log and then print the error. Console.log, going to print the file error. Now, So the first thing that we want to do is we want to drag in the information from a file that may or may not exist. And so the way that we're going to do that is we're going to create a constant and call it goal file data. And that is going to be equal to, we're gonna call that, and we're gonna make it equal to the file system, and we're going to read a file sync. So what this is going to do for us is this is going to the sync right here. This is not something that you want to do very often, because in Node, what this does is this is what's called a thread blocking action. So Node runs on a single thread. It's supposed to run, like, it does run asynchronously, meaning that there's a bunch of stuff happening almost at the same time. But in essence, it's not actually multi-threaded. So there's not true concurrency going on. What's really happening is there's a single thread that's running little bits of actions a little bit at a time and switching back and forth just constantly. And so whenever you have a thread blocking action, everything else stops, and the system will focus solely on this command until it's done. So nothing else can run until this is done. And you do not want to do this very often, because it's going to overall just slow down your program. The reason that we're doing this with loading in the file is because we want to make sure that we are fully pulling in the file data before we're trying to do anything with it. So it's worth the, couple of milliseconds, is really what it boils down to. It's worth the couple of milliseconds that this is going to take away from us to ensure that we're keeping the data itself consistent, and the program has less chances of crashing. So that's why we're doing this. So we're going to do is we're going to pull in a read file sync, and this takes a single argument with the file name, or the file path, and the file name that we're looking for. So just like before, we're going to put this in category files. Yeah, if I can actually spell it right, category files slash, and then we're going to call that get valid file name thing right here, since we only need it the once. And since we've already set the current category, this should work just fine. And then we want to have it called .json. So this should match the file name that is in the current categories folder if it exists. So something else that we need to add in the catch block of the try catch flow is, what we need to do is we need to catch what happens if the file does not exist. This is one of the beautiful things about having try catch blocks. If we can expect that an error is going to occur, we can catch the error and then have the program do something that we want it to do, instead of just crashing the whole program. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that if the error code, so the file error dot code, is equal to, and this is going to seem a little bizarre, this is en, and this is all caps, sorry, ENOENT. This error basically means that a file does not exist, or there's something wrong with the file system. So in the case that we're using it for, we're looking for the fact that the file does not exist. So if the file does not exist, then what we're going to do is we're going to take the current goals thing that we had before and just create a fresh set of goals. We're going to slap it right there. And otherwise, if it's not that error, we just want to print out the log of what the error is and call it a day. And then we can hunt down the bug with that. So the last thing that we need to do is, once we pull in the file data, we set the current goals. If nothing goes wrong, we set the current goals to the file data itself. And so we did say JSON parse, we say the goal file data. And so just like whenever we're pulling from an API and it returns us a string, we need to parse the string and make it into an object. It's the same thing whenever you're reading from a file. You have to parse the file, which is saved as a string, but in JSON format, and then just make it into a JSON object again. And so with all of that, we should be good. Operative word being good. So let's try it, shall we? Making sure that I haven't messed up anything. And we can try it. I don't think I have. So let's turn on the bot again. I'm going to need your help, chat. So let me hit the goals. There we go. It did not crash whenever it tried to pull in, a non-existent file. It did not crash whenever we did that. Now, let's add some goals. So, exclamation point in chat, exclamation point add goal, and then put a goal. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we properly save for an add goal, an edit goal, and a remove goal, or delete goal. Okay? So, now let's try and edit a goal. So let's edit goal number 2. So let's say edit goal 2, and then whatever you want to change it to. Okay, goal 2 has been edited, and then let's check and see if it actually changed it for us. Does it Hawaii stay up all night? That's all right. Nice. So now let's delete one of them. So exclamation point, delete goal, and just pick one, 2, or 3. Your choice. Thank you for the help, by the way, Wolf. This is saving me a lot of typing. The goal 2 has been deleted. And then check it. And Business Y wants a sunrise. Nice. So now is where we're going to check and see if things are busted or not. We're going to close the bot. And first, before we open the bot again, we're going to look in the categories files folder. And look, we have a file. Software and game development. We open the file and look, we have a JSON file saved as a string that has the category and the goals. So now we need to do, and this is going to be the final test, and hopefully it works, is I'm going to start the bot again, and then I'm going to get the goals, and if it doesn't crash and it pulls in the goals, we win. Okay? It didn't crash. Now let's see if it pulls in the actual correct goals. So it should return 1, visit Hawaii, and 2, watch the sunrise. Mind you, we closed the bot. It should have cleared if it didn't work. And it pulled in the goals that we put in just a minute ago from a file after closing the bot. We now have a persistent set of data that will stay there as long as the file exists. Sweet. So that is that for building a goal generation and tracking system using the Twitch API. And what we're going to do with all this is once we start the next stream, we're going to actually set up something that's going to allow us to have an overlay on the stream. So we're going to convert this bot into being more than just a bot. It's going to double as a bot and as a file server. And so with the file server functionality, we are going to create a overlay that's going to go on top of the video, which you're looking at on the stream. It's going to go over the overlay, and then the bot will be able to talk to the overlay using sockets. And we're going to be able to take this data that we're doing, especially with the goals, and we're going to be able to display it on the screen using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, so that whenever we trigger the exclamation point goals command, that we will actually slide over, show us our goals, and then slide back out. So that should be a lot of fun. Please look forward to it. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing on the YouTube channel and following on Twitter and Twitch and all that good jazz. So thanks for watching.